In my last few videos, I examined the books Loneliness, Human Nature and the Need for Social Connection, and The Lonely American, Drifting Apart in the 21st Century. Taken together, these books identify loneliness as a social problem that is hastening millions of individuals to an early grave. But, despite being a social problem, the authors nevertheless suggest that it is the individual who owes it to society to deal with the problems of loneliness on their own, in potential continued isolation, and if they cannot, to submit themselves to their nearest mental health authority, namely because their behavior might bother other people and lead to further loneliness. And, in that context, the authors further emphasize that it is unquestionably helpful to diagnose such loneliness as pathological or to label the lonely individual as being mentally ill, subsequently treating the condition under the medical model of mental illness. The following passage from The Lonely American is particularly important. Page 47. A healthy community, whether it appreciates the fact or not, needs both the bonds of loyalty and the willingness to risk isolation and loneliness in the name of a greater good. Taken in its full context, dealing with loneliness is a matter of loyalty then, because your behavior as a lonely individual can be problematic. That is, it may inconvenience others. You are not only responsible for dealing with the problems of loneliness on your own, problems millions of other people are also facing, or by submitting to the supposed professional who will treat you as if you have a disease. You are being expressly disloyal, perhaps even treasonous to society, if you do not get over these problems on your own. And this is where I wanted to bring in Dutch doctor and psychoanalyst Joost A.M. Meerloo and his book The Rape of the Mind, published in 1956. I had previously noted the following quote, "Loyalty is relationship. Loyalty to family, friends, or country has to be deserved," in relation to these same points on loneliness. But I thought it would be appropriate to pull further from the book, especially its author's points on loyalty, and how loyalty may relate to the social isolation so many of us face today. Broadly speaking, Meerloo's purpose with his book is to address mental coercion in its various forms: brainwashing, thought control, and menticide, exploring how the free-thinking human mind can be turned into an automatically responding machine on both the individual or societal level. As the author writes, the danger of destruction to the spirit may be compared to the threat of total physical destruction through atomic warfare. The book is poignant and culturally relevant even 70 years later, but it is not without its criticisms. The author often expresses the implications of the processes of mental coercion in terms of their threat to democracy or their pull towards totalitarianism. Although our author here was Dutch, he was also an American citizen, and this oversimplified dichotomy can be understood by the likes of his reference to the U.S. being, page 253, the leader of the free world. If nothing else, these references to democracy reveal the author's potential complacency with the clear totalitarian aspects of that same country in question. Meerloo spends a significant amount of time in the first part of his book discussing how the individual is susceptible to mental coercion, bringing in numerous examples of torture or brainwashing from World War II and the Korean War. But I thought I would pull first from the second part of his book, The Techniques of Mass Submission. It is a great spot to jump in at and get a sense of what the author is trying to dissect. I also thought it would create a fitting juxtaposition to the books Loneliness and The Lonely American, and their authors' implicit views that society is the proper measure of all things. I am taking a piecemeal approach, focusing on specific sets of ideas or lines of thinking, cutting out as much as possible due to time constraints. To move along, however, beginning with the second part of his book, The Techniques of Mass Submission, Meerloo introduces the following line of thought in Chapter 5, The Cold War Against the Mind. I am focusing on passages from pages 95 through 99. Every culture institutionalizes certain forms of behavior that communicate and encourage certain forms of thinking and acting, thus molding the character of its citizens. To the degree that the individual is made an object of constant mental manipulation, to the degree that cultural institutions may tend to weaken intellectual and spiritual strength, to the degree that knowledge of the mind is used to tame and condition people instead of educating them, to that degree does the culture itself produce men and women who are predisposed to accept an authoritarian way of life. The man who has no mind of his own can easily become the pawn of a would-be dictator. It is often disturbing to see how even intelligent people do not have straight thinking minds of their own. The pattern of the mind, whether toward conformity and compliance or otherwise, is conditioned rather early in life. If we are to learn to protect our mental integrity on all levels, we must examine not only those aspects of contemporary culture which have to do directly with the struggle for power, but also those developments in our culture which, by dulling the edge of our mental awareness or by taking advantage of our suggestibility, can lead us into the mental death or boredom of totalitarianism. Continual suggestion and slow hypnosis in the wake of mechanical mass communication promotes uniformity of the mind and may lure the public into the happy era of adjustment, integration, and equalization in which individual opinion is completely stereotyped. And although written in the 1950s, the following criticisms should hit close to home. Think, for example, of the inescapable pharmaceutical ads. When I get up in the morning, I turn on my radio to hear the news and the weather forecast. Then comes the pontifical voice telling me to take aspirin for my headache. I have headaches occasionally, so does the world. And my headaches, like everyone else's, come from the many conflicts that life imposes on me. My radio tells me not to think about either the conflicts or the headaches. It suggests instead that I should retreat into that old magic action of swallowing a pill. Although I laugh as I listen to this long-distant prescription by a broadcaster who does not know anything about me or my headaches. And though I meditate for a moment on man's servility to the magic of chemistry, my hand has already begun to reach out for the aspirin bottle. After all, I do have a headache. Examining the broader problem, Meerloo writes, "The mechanization of modern life has already influenced man to become more passive and to adjust himself to ready-made conformity. No longer does man think in personal values, following more his own conscience and ethical evaluations. He thinks more and more in the values brought to him by mass media. Headlines in the morning paper give him his temporary political outlook. The radio blasts suggestions into his ears. Television keeps him in continual awe and passive fixation. Consciously, he may protest against these anonymous voices, but nevertheless, their suggestions ooze into his system." Under the heading, The Public Opinion Engineers, Meerloo offers further criticisms which are still more than applicable today, or perhaps suggest even further stages of decay, given their long-standing applicability. The conviction is steadily growing in our country, the U.S., that is, that an elaborate propaganda campaign for either a political idea or a deep freeze can be successful in selling the public any idea or object one wants them to buy, any political figure one wants them to elect. Recently, some of our election campaigns have been masterminded by the so-called public opinion engineers, who have used all the techniques of modern mass communication and all the contemporary knowledge of the human mind to persuade Americans to vote for the candidate who is paying the public relation men's salaries. The danger of such high-pressure advertising is that the man or the party who can pay the most can become, temporarily at least, the one who can influence the people to buy or to vote for what may not be in their real interest. The specialists in the art of persuasion and the molding of public sentiment may try to knead man's mental dough with all the tools of communication available to them. Pamphlets, speeches, posters, billboards, radio programs, and TV shows. They may water down the spontaneity and creativity of thoughts and ideas into sterile and streamlined cliches that direct our thoughts, even although we still have the illusion of being original and individual. In the wake of such advertising and engineering of consent, the citizen's trust in his leaders may become shaken, and the populace may gradually grow more and more accustomed to official deceit. Finally, when people no longer have confidence in any program, any position, and when they are unable to form intelligent judgments anymore, they can be more easily influenced by any demagogue or would-be dictator, whose strength appeals to their confusion and their growing sense of dissatisfaction. Perhaps the worst aspect of this slick merchandising of ideas is that too often even those who buy the experts, and even the opinion of experts themselves, are unaware of what they are doing. They too are swayed by the current catchword, management of public opinion, and they cannot judge any more the tools they have hired. In our epoch of too many noises and many frustrations, many free minds have given up the struggle for decency and individuality. They surrender to the zeitgeist, often without being aware of it. Public opinion molds our critical thoughts every day. Unknowingly, we may become opinionated robots, the slow coercion of hypocrisy, of traditions in our culture that have a leveling effect. These things change us. We crave excitement, hair-raising stories, sensation. We search for situations that create superficial fear to cover up inner anxieties. We like to escape into the irrational because we dislike the challenge of self-study and self-thinking. Our leisure time is occupied increasingly by automatized activities in which we take no part, listening to piped-in words and viewing television screens. We hurry along with cars and go to bed with a sleeping pill. This pattern of living in turn may open the way for renewed sneak attacks on our mind. Our boredom may welcome any seductive suggestion. And with the development of technology, from the radio and television to the screen in our hands and words piped directly into our ears via headphones or earbuds, our time is overwhelmingly consumed, far more so today with such automatized activities. But to Meerloo, the ultimate fear here with this line of examination is mass conformity to mental coercion, or the totalitarian takeover of the minds of the masses. A society in which, page 117, the citizen no longer knows the real core of his mind. He no longer feels himself an I, an ego, a person. He is only the object of official barrage and mental coercion. Having no personality of his own, he has no individual conscience, no personal morality, no capacity to think clearly and honestly. He learns by rote. He learns thousands of indoctrinated facts and inhales dogma and slogans with every breath he draws. He becomes an obedient pedant, and pedantry makes people into something resembling pots filled with information instead of individuals with free, growing personalities. While Meerloo discusses defenses against this conformity or takeover in full in the last part of his book, he does mention a key defense several pages prior to the aforementioned passage. And I am certain the call to Western civilization is bound to offend. Pages 108 through 109. The ethics of our Western civilization are our strongest defenses against the disease, totalitarianism, that is. For the ideal of these ethics is to produce a breed of men and women who are strongly individualistic and who evaluate situations primarily in terms of their own consciences. We aim to develop in our citizens a sense of self-responsibility, a willingness to confront the world as it is, and an ability to distinguish between right and wrong through their own feelings and thoughts. Such men and women are impelled to action by their personal moral standards rather than by what some outside group sets up as correct. They are unwilling to accept group evaluations immediately unless these coincide with their own personal convictions, or unless they have been able to discuss them in a democratic way. People like this are responsible to their communities because they are first responsible to themselves. Meerloo adds further nuance to this, but this is nevertheless the point of juxtaposition I referenced wanting to pursue with loneliness, the lonely American, and the call for blind loyalty to the greater society. Again, the kind of loyalty where you, even in the case of a condition that could lead you to an early grave, must deal with your own problems, never reaching out to other people unless they are a professional who will view you as diseased, all because that condition might be associated with behavior that could be an inconvenience to normal people. Indeed, I believe that the loneliness epidemic, its significant impact on the real-world health of millions of individuals in this culture may in some capacity be due to the very fact that the totalitarian takeover of the mind, which Meerloo warns against in his book, has long ago already captured the masses in this country. But I will leave it off here, turning next time directly to Meerloo's analysis of loyalty. I hope to see you there.